Welcome to Mystical Mothers Magical Children podcast, where I share wisdom, magic, and practical ways to align with your own inner mystic to raise intuitive, highly sensitive, and gifted children. I'm your host, Dr. Diana, and as a mystical mama, I tap in to share guidance on raising magical beings. Welcome. This episode is about storytelling and the power of storytelling when it comes to culture and raising our children around stories and what that means for them. And so when we think about storytelling, our mind sometimes can immediately go to spiritual and cultural traditions who share these stories. And storytelling and these cultural and spiritual traditions is a way of not only sharing stories about the world and our lens in the world, but it's also a way to preserve history, preserve cultural history, especially impart moral lessons, especially when it comes to sharing these stories with children, and also a way to foster a sense of belonging. And one of my favorites too is that it is a way to also integrate spirituality and connection to the unknown amongst the community. And so, as a result, storytelling is a powerful mechanism to not only share, but also a way to transcend time and space to dive into the possibilities of, of coexistence and existence amongst each other. And one of the other ways too, especially amongst cultural traditions, is that it's a way to keep the spirit of the ancestors alive. It is a way to also celebrate identity amongst a community and also to teach the younger generation about community and cultural identity, especially around themes like resilience and community and love and justice and ways of interacting with each other. In my culture, I'm from the Haitian culture. Storytelling is one of the pillars of our identity as a culture. And in the Haitian culture, storytelling is deeply rooted, and I would say too across many cultures, right? It's deeply rooted in oral traditions. And so typically people would gather in the evenings after a long day of work, and especially in rural areas, and they would come together and a circle, maybe around a campfire or um, in a circle together, and they would share tales passed down through generations, where people participate as listeners or even as contributors to the story. Because again, these stories sometimes are cultural stories that a lot of people may know, or they could be traditional stories that are passed down through families. And these stories often reflect societal values and morals, and they tend to use a lot of humor, satire, and even exaggeration to not only entertain, but to also educate the people and educate the children around a certain principle. And these stories tend to also incorporate elements of spirituality, bringing in elements of nature and ancestral wisdom threaded throughout the stories. And so as a result, they also tend to highlight themes such as resilience and the ability to find joy and contentment, and even in the hardships of life. One of my favorites and one of the popular Haitian traditional Haitian stories is for children, is in the Haitian culture, is one of Timalis and Tonton Buki. And so Timalis is a character that typically represents cleverness and trickery, and he often uses his intelligence and wit to outsmart others, and sometimes at the expense of the other. And Tonton Buki is, in contrast to Tibalis, is one who is gullible. He's often represented as like a naive character, and but he's also good-hearted, and often, as a result, falls victim to Timalis's schemes, right? So to Timalis's trickery. And later on in a different short, I will share a popular story, or a story in a different video for you. In the Haitian culture, and I would say across different cultural oral traditions, there are ways of bringing people together in a circle so that they are ready to hear a traditional story or a cultural story. And so in my tradition, there's a phrase called click, clack, and this is a traditional call and response in Haitian storytelling, where when the storyteller is ready to share a story, they would say click, and that is the storyteller's way of asking the people around them or the audience if they're ready to hear a tale, if they're ready to hear a story. And then in return, the listeners or the audience will respond, clack, as a way to express that they are ready to listen. And so this exchange brings in an immediate sense of community and shared experience and readiness to know that they are about to enter a container, a space of oral storytelling. And it's again a way to bring the people together to impart historical, traditional stories, um, to impart more stories, and also bring in, foster a sense of belonging and tradition and within the community. And so storytelling then is a pillar of not only my culture, but of many different traditional cultures across the world. With that said, I would like to highlight that storytelling then is so integral for children who are highly intuitive, who are highly sensitive, and who are gifted, because it is a way that allows their imagination to spark, and it also opens up their symbolic thinking. In a world that overstimulates our children, in a world that really tries to captivate the imagination of our children, storytelling allows this world to unfold where their imaginations can be free, where they can open up to start thinking and visualizing and all of these different possibilities as these short stories are shared with them and to them. And this allows, especially intuitive and sensitive children, a way and a container to bring in their own imaginative sense and bring in their own way and sense of meaning to the stories that are shared with them. And these are stories that they they get to keep for a long time, because stories, especially to children, they remember them for a long time. Stories are meaningful to children because it is something that brings up, allows them to make sense of the world around them in a way that is safe to them. And so, one of my favorites, I'll never forget this, when my daughter was young, we would share these stories, we would co create stories together. And she would remember these stories weeks and even months later. And so for me, that was a key point in my parenting and my motherhood career, tenure, where I recognized that stories are not just stories for children. They bring life to the children. They bring a sense of meaning where the stories allow them to make sense of their internal world as well. And so when we share these stories with children, with our children, it also allows them a safe way to process their experiences, and not only the experiences that they hear through the stories, but the experiences that they also live through in their daily lives. It allows them to make sense of that. And it also allows them a way to process their emotions. Now, one of the best ways that I remember and that I share with parents to do this with their children, to share these stories and incorporate storytelling into their daily lives, is to craft stories together. This is such a powerful way of being able to not only be connected, but also a way that allows you as the parent into their internal world. When you're co creating stories with your child, you get to not only see how they think, but you also get to see how they process things. You also get to have an internal experience of what they are afraid of, what brings them joy, how they process and regulate their emotions through these crafting of stories together. And one of the ways I recommend doing that is, if you start a story, you can weave in maybe from a personal experience that you two had, right? Or from a traditional family story, or even a story that you all have read together from a library book. But weaving in any of these capacities, any of these reference points, and then building on to those stories where you and your child then gets to co-create what happens next, and then what happens next as a result. So for example, with my child, we would start, I would start the story and maybe set the setting, and then I would say, and then Lila decided to walk into a forest, and she and then it started raining. What does Lila do? Right? And then your child can add to that and say, well, Lila forgot her umbrella. What does she decide to do as a result? And all of these, different ways of decision making as well. This works on decision making, but this also works on you guiding your child on emotional regulation. For example, in Lila's case, and I just made that up, in Lila's case, she forgot to bring her umbrella on this hike that she was about to go on. How does Lila feel? Does she feel sad, or is she excited that she gets to run in the rain and jump in puddles? And if Lila is sad, what can she do then to help problem solve this situation? Right? So these are different ways, not only that your child gets to add to, but you as a parent also get to guide your child and making these decisions, so that they learn that they in this world of co-creation, they also learn the process of emotional regulation. They also learn the process of decision making skills in this story and co-creative story. And I kid you not, my daughter and I, when she was younger, we used to do this all the time. And I kid you not, late weeks later, even months later, she would bring these stories up just out of nowhere and remember not only the details of what we, worked through. I didn't remember because I was just creating it on a whim with her, but she remembered the details. And not only that, she was able to also then, from that point on, also add to it or recreate it in a way that made more sense to her in that moment. And so these are some of the magical and beautiful ways of weaving in various components, of creating stories together, to real life, to working on different skills, to connecting with your child on a deeper level, to also getting to know them, right? And make sense of their own inner world so that you can guide them and lead them as they are also guiding and leading you. And the other part I would incorporate in um, crafting these stories together with your child is bringing in the natural elements, bringing in, magical elements as well. So, because we are a part of this natural world, why not weave them in through our stories? So, bringing in, for example, intuitive animals or even elements of nature like the rain, like walking in, a wooded forest, or even talking with an animal, right? Bringing in these magical ways of, bring enhancing the imagination so that the child is not limited to, well, this is reality and we cannot talk to animals. Allowing the imagination and supporting the imagination to unfold in that way is key. And then also weaving in symbolic lessons, right? Like things like emotional regulation, things like problem solving, or, weaving in some moral lessons as well into the stories that you co-create together makes it even more powerful for you and your child. And so the call to action I bring up for you, for you this week is, how are you creating or sharing a story with your child this week where you are weaving in and supporting imagination and co-creating something together that is meaningful for the both of you? I highlight and recommend that you do that this week. And it can be as simple as going to the library, reading a story together, and then, as you work with your child, recreating that story with a different ending. Or, it could be, well, it's a story that maybe you all had a personal experience with your child and you want to create that story and weave in fun elements to that so that it's fun and meaningful for you and your child. If you have stories or cultural stories or favorite family stories that you'd love to share with me, please email me at info@integratedfamilies.com. I would love to hear from you, maybe have it even be featured in a future episode. I hope you have a beautiful day. Happy co-creation, happy storytelling with you and your magical child.